In early 2003, a German geophysicist named Jörg Fassbinder was running a magnetometer over the dry plain of southern Iraq on the surface above the ancient city of Uruk. The machine measures variations in the Earth's magnetic field. Buried structures show up as ghosts in the data. What appeared on his magnetogram west of a building called the New Year's Temple in the bed of the river that used to be the Euphrates was a rectangular structure. Walls, internal chambers, a configuration that matched, line for line, the burial described in the oldest piece of literature humans have ever produced. The Epic of Gilgamesh, composed 3,000 years before Fassbinder's machine was invented. He gave one interview to the BBC. He used careful language. He said the structure looked very similar to the one in the Epic. He never excavated it. 3 weeks later, on March 20th, 2003, the United States invaded Iraq. The dig never resumed. What Fassbinder's magnetometer found is still under the ground. The project was a collaboration between the Bavarian Department of Historical Monuments in Munich and the German Archaeological Institute. Fassbinder, a geophysicist by training, was working with Margaret van Es, the Institute's lead archaeologist on the Uruk concession. Their method was cesium magnetometry. The device passes inches above the desert surface and measures the magnetic field at thousands of points per second. Baked mud brick, the standard construction material of ancient Mesopotamia, holds a distinct magnetic signature. Walls show up as bright lines. Voids show up as gaps. Canals, gardens, chambers, foundations, all of it resolves into a kind of medical scan of a buried city. What the scan showed at Uruk was extraordinary, a city wall nearly 40 meters thick, exactly as described in the opening lines of the Epic. A water gate, an internal canal system so dense that Fassbinder, in interviews afterwards, compared the layout to Venice. Garden structures, a Middle Babylonian graveyard, the remains of what scholars call the New Year's Temple of Anu, the sky god, and west of that temple, in the channel of the Dead River, the structure. Fassbinder's exact words were recorded on the BBC World Service in April 2003. He said, "I don't want to say definitely it was the grave of King Gilgamesh, but it looks very similar to that described in the Epic. The phrasing matters." The team did not claim to have found the tomb. They claimed to have found a structure consistent with the text. The next step was excavation. Excavation requires permits, security, equipment, and an intact academic infrastructure inside Iraq. Within 3 weeks of the announcement, none of those existed. The Epic of Gilgamesh is the oldest known work of narrative literature in human history. It predates Homer by 15 centuries. The most complete version, the standard Babylonian version, was assembled from 12 clay tablets excavated by Austin Henry Layard and Hormuzd Rassam at Nineveh in the 1850s. The tablets came to the British Museum and they sat in storage. In 1872, an engraver named George Smith, who had taught himself cuneiform, recognized that one of them, catalog number K3375, contained a flood narrative older than Genesis. He read it in front of the Society of Biblical Archaeology, and the room understood in real time that the Bible had not invented its most famous story. It had inherited it. Gilgamesh, the king at the center of the epic, was a real historical figure. The Sumerian king list, a clay prism currently in the Ashmolean Museum at Oxford, names him as the 5th king of the first dynasty of Uruk after the flood. It lists his mother as the goddess Ninsun. It gives his reign as 126 years. The epic describes him as 2/3 divine, 1/3 human. It says he built the walls of Uruk. The walls have been excavated. They exist. It says he traveled to the ends of the earth, and it says he descended below it. It says he came back with a record of what he had seen, and that he wrote that record on a tablet of lapis lazuli, locked it inside a copper box, and sealed the box inside the foundations of the city walls. The opening lines of Tablet 1, in Andrew George's standard translation, instruct the reader directly. Find the copper box. Open the lock of bronze. Take out the tablet of lapis lazuli. Read what Gilgamesh wrote. The tablet has not been found. There is one fragment in the British Museum that is treated differently from the rest of the epic. The catalog number is 18761117286. Tablet 12. It is broken into 6 pieces. It is not on public display. Most academic editions of the epic treat it as a later appendix, a poem that does not fit cleanly with the 11-tablet narrative arc. The standard summary calls it a story within a story, a side episode. What Tablet 12 actually contains is the only first-person account in ancient Near Eastern literature of a man who claims to have entered the world beneath the earth and returned to describe it. In the tablet, Gilgamesh drops 2 objects, a drum and a drumstick, through a hole in the floor of a carpenter's house. They fall into the underworld. Enkidu, his companion, volunteers to retrieve them. Gilgamesh gives him a list of instructions. Do not wear clean clothes. Do not anoint yourself with oil. Do not carry weapons. Do not wear sandals. Do not embrace those you love. Do not strike those you hate. Do not make any sound that marks you as a living thing. Enkidu disobeys every instruction. The underworld closes its doors behind him. He cannot come back as a man. His spirit returns to Gilgamesh through a hole in the ground, and then he describes what he saw. The description is not vague. Enkidu reports an organized space, 7 gates, walls, a queen, Ereshkigal, who controls passage. Inhabitants sorted by category, by manner of death, by how they were treated by the living. The man with many sons sits on a cushioned seat and drinks clear water. The man with no sons wanders thirsty. The warrior honored in burial finds a place among the respected. The body left unburied has no rest. The stillborn child plays at a table of gold and silver. This is not metaphor. This is a tour, a classification system, a built environment described by a witness who returns with details so specific that scribes in Babylon, Nineveh, and copied them onto fresh tablets for over 1,000 years without changing the structure. And the epic says, in the lines immediately following the death of Enkidu in Tablet 8, that when Gilgamesh himself dies, he is buried in a stone chamber constructed inside the bed of a river. The river is diverted, the chamber is sealed, and the waters are returned to their course. The construction is described in technical terms, with specific dimensions, specific materials, and specific positioning. The structure Fassbinder's magnetometer detected in 2003 lies in the bed of a river on the edge of Uruk. It is the right size, the right shape, and in the right place. The deeper question, the one no excavation has been able to address, is what the burial chamber was built for. The epic describes Gilgamesh as a king who knew things no other human knew. He had been to Mount Mashu, the gate through which the sun god travels at night, a tunnel described as cutting through a mountain from one side of the world to the other. He had crossed the waters of death. He had reached Utnapishtim, the flood survivor, living at the edge of existence. He had returned. The text says he wrote down what he learned. If Tablet 12 is read as a literal account of a structured space, accessed through a specific entry point, then the tomb described in Tablet 8 is not the end of a story. It is a doorway. A king buried directly over the place his friend described, with a record sealed inside the walls above, in a city whose plan was preserved beneath the desert for 5,000 years. On April 10, 2003, 2 days after United States troops entered Baghdad, the Iraq National Museum was looted. The collection had held approximately 170,000 objects, one of the most complete records of Mesopotamian civilization in the world. By the time the looting was contained, around 15,000 objects were missing. The investigation was led by Colonel Matthew Bogdanos, a United States Marine Corps reservist who was also a classic scholar and a homicide prosecutor in New York. His team, working from inside the damaged museum, recovered objects, interviewed staff, and reconstructed the timeline. His official findings, published in his September 2003 report, distinguished between two patterns of theft. Some of the looting, he wrote, was opportunistic. Display cases smashed, visible items taken. The other pattern was different. Quoting his findings as later summarized by the Oriental Institute at the University of Chicago, some of the looters were professional thieves who stole specific artifacts from the storerooms. The storerooms in question were in the basement. They required keys, they required knowledge of the building's layout, the collection's catalog system, and the location of specific items within thousands of objects in storage. Among the things in those storerooms were untranslated tablets from sites across southern Iraq, including Uruk. The exact contents of what was taken from the basement collections has never been fully reconstructed. Some objects were recovered in subsequent years, others were not. The Fassbinder and Van Es survey, which had been preparing for excavation of multiple features, including the structure in the riverbed, ended. The German team withdrew. The international archaeological infrastructure inside Iraq collapsed. Permits expired. Funding was redirected. The Uruk project did not resume meaningful field work for years. In 2023, 20 years after the original announcement, Fassbinder responded to a public inquiry from the writer Graham Hancock about the original BBC interview. His clarification was direct. He stated that he had never claimed to have found the grave of Gilgamesh. The structure detected in the magnetometer survey was consistent with the epic's description. That was all he had ever said. The press had inflated his words. The dig had not happened. The structure remained as it had been in 2003, in the ground beneath southern Iraq. The detection stands. The excavation does not. Tablet 12 says the underworld is a structured place with 7 gates. Modern translations treat this as cosmological poetry, a layered description of metaphysical reality. There is another reading. The Sumerians, Akkadians, and Babylonians who inherited their texts used the word kuur to mean 3 different things depending on context: mountain, foreign land, and the world beneath. The same word for all of them. To the ancient Mesopotamian observer, a mountain and a passage into the earth were the same physical category, something that rose from the surface and contained an interior. When the epic says Gilgamesh entered Mount Mashu and walked through it from one side to the other, the geographic claim is precise. A passage, a tunnel, something hollow inside something solid. When Tablet 12 says Enkidu descended through a hole in the floor and found a city with gates and walls, the claim follows the same internal logic. The text is consistent across multiple episodes. The world beneath has structure. It can be entered. The entries are physical places. Some are on mountains. One, the text claims, is in Uruk. The structure Fassbinder detected has not been opened. The lapis lazuli tablet has not been recovered. The foundation deposits in the walls of Uruk have not all been excavated. Modern surveys of the site continue when the security situation permits, but they have not returned to the riverbed structure. Less than 5% of Uruk has been fully excavated as of the most recent published reports. The city is vast. The work of a century has scratched the surface. The Tablet 12. Fragment sits in the basement of the British Museum in a case the public never sees. The translation has been done. The text has been published. What it describes, in the literal terms the scribes used, is a place with gates that opens beneath the ground of southern Iraq. In 2003, an instrument confirmed that something is there. The instrument was put away. The country was invaded. The museum was emptied. And the people who came closest to finding out what was under the river were the same people who never got to dig. The Epic of Gilgamesh ends in its standard form with the same lines it begins with. Find the copper box, open the lock of bronze, take out the lapis lazuli tablet. Read what the king wrote when he returned. The walls are there. The foundation deposits have not all been opened. The structure in the riverbed remains where the magnetometer found it. The oldest narrative ever written describes a king who descended below the earth, came back with a record, and made sure it would survive. Whatever he put in those walls and whatever lies beneath the river is either still there or it is not. And in April 2003, the one chance we had to find out was interrupted by something that arrived from the other direction. The river is still buried. The chamber is still sealed. The tablet that describes what is under it is in a museum drawer that almost no one opens. If this is the kind of history that mainstream archaeology stopped asking about, subscribe now.